Hey gang, this is Ian with Humbucker Soup, and today we're looking at how to use chromaticism in our chords for compositional purposes. We're going to look at a couple classic ways of doing this and a way to get outside of the box with it as well. So let's get started. So when we're talking about chromaticism, we can categorize it into two places. One would be melodic or compositional, and the other one could be transitional or rhythmic. In the intro piece, we heard a Les Paul riff followed by a very classic jazz chord progression, which is based on transitions. And there are great voicings that we can learn. So in this chord progression, you hear this movement down from the major third in the bass chromatically to the root in the key of G. So we're going to start on this inverted G major seventh with the root, the third in the bottom. So we have a 3, a 1, a 5, and a major 7, which is a very beautiful jazz voicing. And we're going to move chromatically, subtly down to this A chord with a flat 9. So we have a flat 9, a 7, a third, and then this 13. So it's an A, flat 9, 13. And then we're going to move to a traditional A minor 7th voice where we have the root in the bass and then the 7th chord built on top of that. And then we're going to play a 5 chord in a very unconventional way. So we actually don't have a D in this. We have a D, flat 5, flat 9, 13. Here's the flat 5, here's the flat 9, here's the flat 7, here's a major third, and here's a 13. So this chord is actually functioning as the 5 chord, and we're going to do a movement of these low 3 strings a half step down to resolve to this very beautiful G major 7th. So we're starting on a G major 7th, and we're ending on a G major 7th. This works really well over the 4 chord as well, and all of these chords can be really useful transition chords from one place in the composition to another. The next thing we're going to look at is how to use chromaticism in the melody. A great example is the George Jones song, I Always Get Lucky With You, and the vocal melody sounds like this. So that melody gets played by the piano and then emphasized again by the guitar and sang by George Jones in the verse. And the verse chords support that. We're going to use this B flat triad to start, and then we're going to raise the 5 in that triad to augment the chord. And then that note's going to raise another half step to the 4 chord. So that note goes from the 5 of the 1, it's augmented, and then it turns into the 3rd on the 4th chord. After we've played that chord, we're going to now raise the root a half step to play a diminished flat 5, which wants to resolve back to the 1. And we're going to go to a 5 chord. So that chord progression. So this is a great way for the guitar player to learn how to voice these triads throughout the neck, listening to that melody and letting it lead how we phrase things. The next thing we're going to think about is how to use these chromaticisms in a purely rhythmic way. So not so much transitionally as we would in jazz and not so much melodically as we would in something like country music. This can be heard in some forms of blues. So we may be comfortable with a flat 5, but we can also play chromatically very fluidly if we can use it purely rhythmic. The funny thing is that this evolved to a place where in a certain style of music we hear this almost exclusively. I'm talking about punk rock or metal music, where chromaticism is actually used as a very aggressive form of expression that doesn't have much to do with transitions. It's not subtle, and it's not necessarily melodic either, but this evolved directly from blues. And if we can think about a blues progression, we can also imagine that as a punk rock song. They're actually very similar. So once we can start to categorize chromaticism into melodic or rhythmic purposes, then we can start to incorporate that into our own playing. Whether we're playing country, classic rock, jazz, or punk rock, chromaticism has a great way of enriching the composition or the melody. So don't be afraid to try new things, and once again, thanks for practicing with us. We'll see you next time.